Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our webinar, General Operations and Bookkeeping, Part 4 of our How to Start a Small Business series. My name is Kelly Schweppe, and I'm the Program Marketing Specialist here at General Electric Credit Union. We are so glad you've joined us as we have a lot of great content ahead. Thanks to technology, we are excited to be able to connect with you on such an important topic and wanted to thank you all for tuning in from the comfort of your home, work, or wherever you may be today. So with that, let's get on to the presentation. I wanted to introduce Derek to introduce himself and today's guest speaker.
Hello, everybody. How you doing? As Kelly mentioned, my name's Derek Ty, and I am a business service support representative here at General Electric Credit Union. And basically, my job is to establish business accounts, products, and services for our business members. So we offer a variety of business products and lending needs to help all business sizes to grow and to succeed. And we begin offering these series of webinars a few years ago to assist our business members in improving the quality of their business financial life. So if we can accommodate your business with some deposit products or lending needs, please feel free to reach out to myself or our group. I now would like to introduce and thank our presenter, Susan Bosch. Susan owns and manages Bosch Tax Services located in Florence, Kentucky. As an enrolled agent, Susan has earned the privilege of representing both individuals and small business taxpayers before the IRS. Enrolled agents, like an attorney or a CPA, are generally unrestricted as to which taxpayers they can represent, what tax matters they can handle, and which IRS officers they can represent clients before. Susan has 21 years of tax preparation and planning experience after graduating from Northern Kentucky University. Susan, the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Derek. I sure appreciate it.
You're welcome.
As Derek mentioned, I'm an enrolled agent with the Internal Revenue Service. I don't work for the Internal Revenue Service. I work for my clients and their businesses. So just so we are very clear on where we are with that. So hey, everybody, I am excited to have just about an hour. We won't use all that time. We'll leave some time at the end to answer any questions that you have while I'm speaking. As Kelly said, just go ahead and send those in. So when we get to the end of this, you can have those questions answered to the best of my ability. If I don't have an answer immediately, I will make sure that I get back to you regarding those questions. So in terms of what we're going to do today, we're going to go ahead and talk about some concrete answers for your business. And specifically, we're going to talk about general operations and bookkeeping. We're going to talk about some accounting. We're going to talk about some tax stuff. We're going to make sure that you have a good scope from a general operations standpoint and bookkeeping and accounting, what you should be looking for and what you should be doing in your business if you're not already doing it. A lot of you who have already started and you're up and running, you're probably doing a lot of what we're going to talk about today, and maybe now is the time to hone in and make those activities that you're working on more optimized to generate additional revenues. Let me be clear, though, the topics that we're going to talk about are very, very large in scope. And normally, business operations, accounting, bookkeeping, they are each taught over the course of a full semester at the university level. So my goal is to give you an expanded idea as to how to best manage your business operations on a day-to-day basis and to make sure that you're managing tasks that maybe need a little bit less attention than that. So when we talk about business operations, we're referring to the activities that you as the business owner engage in on a daily basis. And obviously your purpose in starting your own business was to create revenue. And if you are not yet in that position where it is your only source of income, and that is your hope one day, the best way to do that is to set up very specific processes and very specific operations to make sure that as you're working and creating your business, that you can optimize that amount of revenue to generate sufficient revenue, not only to cover your expenses, but also to garner a profit that will allow you to do just that thing that you love doing. So your operations are going to vary widely based on your industry. So the inner workings of your business, you want to run as efficiently as possible. And if you notice during your day that you are taking time out of what you love to do, let's say you're a notary and you really enjoy the process of meeting with a client, notarizing their documents, and ensuring that what they have notarized is correct and clear and filed with the appropriate authorities. You like notarizing, you like meeting with clients, you like knowing that things are done well. You don't necessarily want to be focusing on your bookkeeping. You don't necessarily want to be sitting down with a profit and loss form. One of the things that I will say is I have had calls from clients who became business owners, and they will call me and they have spoken with someone like Derek, and they'll say, hey, Susan, Derek from GE Credit Union needs my P&L, and I don't know what a P&L is. And they think it's the letter Paul, the letter Nancy, and the letter Larry, so P&L, and it's actually P and L for profit and loss. So let's start baseline on that. So if Derek says, hey, we're going to do a loan for you, we need your up-to-date P&L. If you're already working with a bookkeeper or an accountant, that person is going to be able to send that to you directly. It's going to be up to date, it's going to be validated, and it's going to be verified that that information has gone through another party and that that information is in fact correct. So when we look at those different ideas of what type of business you're in, my assumption, most business owners, regardless of what business they've started, they didn't start a business because they really love to keep track of what's happening in their business. They started their business because they went to the store and they weren't finding a soap that they liked, that they felt was good for their skin. And maybe they had somebody in their family with allergies. So they started making soap that they knew for sure would accommodate that person's allergies. And then they decided there's probably a market for this. Okay, great. So as a business owner, you started making soap and marketing that. And that's what you want to be doing. You don't want to be sitting down calculating your inventory and making sure that your cost of goods sold is tabulated correctly. Maybe you are a moving company. So whatever you're doing, whatever your mode of money making is, each industry is going to have a different mode of operation. But what as entrepreneurs we all have in common is that we want to do what we love to do. You wouldn't have branched out, you wouldn't have taken the leap to start your own business if you didn't truly enjoy what you're doing. At least I hope that that is the case. I know that's why I started my own business. So when you started it, you wanted to do something that you love or create a product that you love. And you didn't start it to sit down with a whole bunch of bookkeeping that needs to be done. So if that's the case, if you are in a position where you have started a business or you are starting a business and you realize a lot of your time is being spent on this other stuff that has to be done, you've got to keep your books. You've got to make sure that not only are your books kept correctly, but that your profit and loss form is accurate, and therefore your taxes can be done well and accurately. And if the IRS ever says, hey, we would like to see substantiation of your expenses and your revenue, those documents are ready and available because they were prepared before that tax return was ever prepared and submitted. So if the IRS ever says, we'd love to see this, you have that document ready and available, and you don't have to ever be scared as the business owner that, oh man, I got a letter from the IRS, what's going on? They want to see my books, they want to see this. It's already there and it's already ready. So it takes that stress away from you as the business owner, and it lets you focus fully on what you're doing as the business owner. So when you realize that you are at that point, optimizing your operations is just managing the inner workings of your business so it runs as efficiently as possible. Now, I will be the very first person to tell you that I used to be horrible at delegating. I was terrified that as a tax advisor, as a tax preparer, as a tax planner, my clients would call the office and somehow that would fall through the cracks if I wasn't the one answering the phone. So it used to be back in the day, I was the one who answered the phones and marked credit as paid to, when my clients would pay me for my services. I would be vacuuming the floors after all of my clients had left for the day. I was doing every single thing that happened in my office. So if you guys remember back in the, I don't know, probably 5 or 10 years ago, probably 10 at this point, there was a Staples commercial and the guy's name was Dave. And it was the one guy in the office, and he was talking to himself because he was the business owner. Dave, the printer's out of ink. Dave, the computer's down. Dave, the whatever. I was Dave in my own office, and I was doing every single thing. And what I realized is that for a time that worked really, really well. But as my business continued to grow, I realized that I wasn't going to be able to do that on my own and continue to serve my clients as I wanted to ensure that they were served. And so I decided that delegation was going to have to happen. So delegating is when you either you outsource or you delegate to an employee a task or a responsibility. So that for me was huge because I had to trust that person to make sure that if they answered the phone and they scheduled an appointment, that they said to that client what needed to be said, that they put that business schedule in to say this client is coming in on such and such a date at such and such a time, and this is why they're coming, because I wouldn't have spoken to them first. So my organic growth in my business it forced me into a decision. I could either allow the organic growth to happen, meaning that when my clients were out in the wide, wide world and their colleague or their friend or their family member or their neighbor started talking about tax stuff, or maybe that neighbor just got a letter from the IRS and they are fraught with worry over it. Those people would say to their friend, colleague, neighbor, hey, you should call Susan. She can help you with that, which is awesome. Organic growth is fantastic until you reach a point where you realize I can either continue my organic growth or I can serve the current clients that I have well, but I can only do that if I start to delegate. So if you haven't been faced with this concern yet of I'm doing all of these things and I'm starting to run out of time, I'm being overwhelmed with the amount of time that it is taking me to do these tasks, it may very well be time for you to start delegating. So like I said, in my experience, most business owners didn't start the business to manage their books, to do the taxes. And there are things that you are considering as a business professional that we need to certainly talk about and figure out what's going to be best for your game planning. So when it comes to bookkeeping, like I already mentioned, bookkeepers are fantastic. They take that whole piece of that concern out of your worry. They take it away from you and you don't have to worry about it. So big question that we get asked in our business is there a difference between bookkeeping and accounting and professional tax service? The short answer is yes. There are a lot of differences in those things. That work a lot of times can overlap. And when we talk about bookkeeping, that is the task of the professional who keeps the finances in order. The bookkeeper manages the general accounting ledgers, they record the journal entries or transactions, and they can generate financial statements. And when I say financial statements, I'm talking about your cash flow, your balance sheet, your profit and loss form. So key things that you will want to look at to be able to make sure your business is running as efficiently as possible. Because if you're not aware of how much income you've got and how much outflow you have, you're going to wind up in a position where maybe there is money leaking out of your business little by little, and you're not sure what's happening until you see it in black and white. And the job of a bookkeeper is to make sure those transactions are in and that they're reconciled so that you can see on a spreadsheet, you can see on a data sheet exactly where that money is going. So the difference between then a bookkeeper and an accountant is one that will prepare those statements for you. So some accountants are CPAs, meaning they're certified public accountants, and some accountants hold an accounting degree, but they are not CPAs. CPAs tend to charge quite a bit more for their work than bookkeepers do. So what I found in my business when I started offering bookkeeping services, that the best mode of operation that I could have for my clients to say, you started a business, you don't want to do the bookkeeping, it's overwhelming to you, whatever the case is, let's get a bookkeeper in-house for us that does all the bookkeeping, that has an accounting degree, so that we can create those statements, those cash flows, and those balance sheets, and those profit and loss forms. Because I have enough experience in business and as an enrolled agent looking at business models to say, here's what this statement shows you. And that is the job of the accountant and the tax advisor to say, this is what it looks like. This is what your business on paper is structured to do and how you can slate it to grow, but not grow too quickly or not become overwhelmed with that growth. So a tax preparer is responsible for submitting your tax forms, and I act as a liaison between you and the Internal Revenue Service. So if you come to me as a client and you say, hey, Susan, I've been doing my own books all year, here's my profit and loss form. Fantastic. First thing I'm going to ask you is, do you have substantiation for what you're presenting to me on your profit and loss? And if your answer is, nope, I kind of guessed, Or I pulled this and I did that, and I think it's pretty accurate. I really can't use that profit and loss form to create what we would consider a valid tax return, because you kind of guessed. And you would be surprised how many people kind of do that. And so from my standpoint, it's very clear, it became very clear that we needed to do some bookkeeping services, or ensure that our clients were aware of what type of bookkeeping services they needed to do on their own, so that when they brought me that profit and loss and I said, hey, do you have substantiation for this? Their answer was an unequivocal, yes, I do. I pulled all my transactions from my bank and my credit card statement and my line of credit, and we have it all. It's in our software system, or it's on my QuickBooks, or it's in Excel, to make sure everything's taken care of. So when it comes to bookkeeping, you want to make sure of a couple of things. So the first thing that I want to cover with that specific bookkeeping task is that there are two different kinds of bookkeeping. There's single entry and there's double entry. So you don't need formal accounting training if you want to do a single entry system. That would be if you just decided, I'm going to use an Excel spreadsheet. I'm going to keep track of all of my income and all of my expenses on this Excel spreadsheet. I'm going to make sure that I just make sure when those deposits go into my business checking account, they're recorded in Excel. And when they come out, if I write a check, or I use my debit card, or I use my credit card, that I go ahead and I make sure that those are all recorded there. So you don't need any accounting training for that. It would be something where you don't have a lot of physical assets and you don't buy or sell on credit, and that you would hold a small inventory. That is what a single entry system is working for. So if you've got some inventory, if you ever want to purchase anything on credit, if you need to get a business loan, you're definitely going to need to be able to present to the bank a double entry system with a profit and loss form to substantiate that. So double entry follows the principle that every single transaction has at least two accounts, and they're recorded as debits and credits. So this may take you back to the wide world if you were ever in university and they said, we've got debits and credits and it always has to be balanced. That is something that gets drilled into your head when you are in business school, when you are an accounting degree, whatever that looks like for you, it gets drilled into your head that it always has to be balanced. So let's say you've got a $10 sale. That means that your cash account will be debited for $10 and your sales account will be credited by the same amount. And that's the double entry system. And so they always have to be balanced. One side is always going to be equal to the other, and that's just how it goes. So if you're going to use a double entry system, there are a couple of softwares that you can use. One that a client of mine uses, she absolutely loves it. It's called Zoho, which is Z-O-H-O. Another one is QuickBooks, and I will be the very first. I'm terrible at delegating, but I also know that QuickBooks is incredibly challenging to use if you do not have a lot of accounting experience, because it is the double entry system. It does pull some transactions in from your accounts outside of where you are in your software. And if you don't know how to balance those things out, it can be maddening, and it can create some really incorrect statements, because when you put in bad data, you're going to get bad data out. So if you put stuff in that isn't exactly true and it's not balanced, and you run a report, that report will not be accurate. The other one is Sage, and that's the one that we use in our business. It's the one that when we started working into the systems, we realized was going to be the easiest for our clients to use. It was going to be the best for our bookkeeper to use, and it was going to produce the reports that we wanted and needed on a regular basis. So once we cover those two types of double entry, single entry, then we've got to look at what kind of cost basis you're working on. Are you going to be cash based, or are you going to be accrual based? And if you're sitting there saying, I don't even know what that means, pretty basic. Cash based is that you have the decision with cash, your business recognizes its revenues and its expenses when the money moves. So expenses are recognized when they're paid for. And so anytime cash enters or exists in your accounts, they're recognized in your books. And that it goes into your book when the money actually exchanges. So cash-based means I got a deposit, I'm going to record that deposit. I paid a bill, that means I'm going to record that payment. And in accrual method, the revenue is recognized when it's earned, meaning in my industry, I did a tax return, I earned the money. If my client hasn't paid me yet, I still record that as earned income, even though it's not in my account yet. So as you can imagine, the accrual method can be a little bit trickier if you are not versed in accounting, if you're not versed in bookkeeping. So a lot of the clients, a lot of the small businesses that we work with are on a cash basis because it is a simpler mode of operation. And so if you're working as a sole proprietorship and you're filling out a Schedule C, there is a question on there that says, are you on a cash or accrual basis? And you have to answer that question. And that is what that question means, is are we recognizing this as the cash physically goes in and out, or are we doing it when we incur the expense or when we earn the money? So they're very, very different. Both cash and accrual bases can work with single or double entry bookkeeping. For the purposes of ensuring that you know your bookkeeping is correct without flaw, the double entry system certainly is the best way to go, just because then you know everything is balanced and you have taken all of your steps into consideration. So now we're going to look at a list of questions as to what do we really need to know before we decide if we're going to hire somebody. So when we start looking at that, and I think it's great that as a business owner, you have taken the reins on keeping track of your own books. And for a long time, I did that myself, and it worked really, really well because I was the only person who was messing with my stuff, and I knew exactly what was going on. And then when I reached that point of, okay, we've got this growth, we've got things that are happening, this bookkeeping side of things and keeping track of my accounts, it's more than I want to put into it. And I was getting frustrated because I didn't have the time that I knew I needed to put into it. So in terms of the yes, no questions that we're going to look at now, the first one is, do you understand the need for bookkeeping and accounting in your business? It sounds like you do, because you've already decided I'm going to handle it myself, or I'm maybe considering hiring somebody to do it. But as business owners, you are aware that bookkeeping and accounting and tax preparation are necessary within your business. So the second question, let's say we all answer an unequivocal yes, we understand, Susan, please stop harping on this. Do you have the skills to track your expenses without becoming frustrated or overwhelmed? Part of that can be a matter of how many transactions you have. So let's say you get a monthly deposit from 4 or 5 different vendors or sales folks that you are working with. That's not a lot. But let's say you've got 1,000 clients and now suddenly you've got 1,000 transactions to try to track. It can become frustrating or overwhelming to be able to go in and keep track of that. So if you're in a position where you understand the need and you're not frustrated or overwhelmed, keep doing your own books. There's no reason. As a business owner, I had a hard time taking the leap of starting to pay someone else to do work that I knew how to do. So keep doing your own books. Make sure you're keeping very good track of everything so that when you do prepare your tax returns, they are spot on and you don't have to worry about that. And then if you ever need that validation from a bookkeeper for a lender that says, hey, this is validated, we've looked at it, everything is good to go, then you can look for some extra help at that point. So the next question, let's say you understand the need, it doesn't frustrate you or overwhelm you. The next question is, do you use a bookkeeping or accounting software to track your business revenues and expenses? Maybe right now you're doing it on Excel, and that can work in a very small venue, in a very small business, that can work. But when you grow and as you get more and more successful, more and more clients, more and more sales, you will realize that Excel doesn't necessarily give you everything that you need, and it doesn't reconcile the way that it should. So you would want to look at an accounting software. So QuickBooks is one. I find QuickBooks really frustrating because there's stuff that happens in the background of that program that when it gets pulled in from a bank or a credit union or a credit card, that it can start changing your data in a way that you can't find out how to fix and correct it. So be cautious with QuickBooks. I do know that Zoho is a very user-friendly system. So if you're looking for something to use in your own business, but you want to keep control of that, Zoho is a really good software. And for people who have some accounting background and who know how to use the reconciliation tools and the tools to create the reports, Sage is the software that we choose to use in our bookkeeping function here at the office. because that allows us to do the double journal entries. It allows us to either do cash, which is most common. The cash accounting method is most common for small businesses, or accrual if there's a business that's a little bit more robust or different in how they need to track their income and expenses. So let's say, yes, Susan, actually, I've got this software that I really love and it makes sense. And I'm sure that it's right because I can see my numbers flow. And when I look at my balance sheet and I look at my cash flow and I look at my profit and loss form, it looks right. I don't see anything that makes me raise an eyebrow. Awesome. That is perfect. Keep doing what you're doing. There's no reason to outsource that or delegate that if you are confident in that software and you're confident in your own skills and your time limitations to be able to do that. The next thing is your software automated, or do you have to log in and download transactions or perhaps manually enter those transactions? Because if it's not automated, a lot of times what you wind up doing is sitting in front of your computer doing some data entry. You can inadvertently change a number. You can have a typo, which we all have typos every now and then, but on a profit and loss in a business sense, you don't want to have a typo. And that would be something when you look at that P&L, you can say, ooh, that doesn't look quite right. And you can find that typo. But again, it's a matter of time and functionality and being able to do that. So if you say, yep, my software is automated, I'm confident in it, I don't get overwhelmed or frustrated, I understand that we have to do this on a regular basis so we don't get behind, keep doing what you're doing. You don't need a bookkeeper or an accountant, just keep doing what you're doing and keep those books ready to go. The next question is, do you have the knowledge and the patience to reconcile your books? And this is in my own business where I decided I really don't do bookkeeping. I knew it from the very precipice of my business that bookkeeping was not going to be anything that I did, because it's the minutia of bookkeeping that I absolutely can't stand. If there is a dime missing somewhere in my balance sheet, I don't want to spend an hour looking for a dime. I'm just not that worried about it. Give me the puzzle of a tax return any day of the week, and I will work on that, and I will work on multiple tax returns throughout the day, and I love it. I think it's exciting, the puzzle of it, and making sure that I've captured all of my clients' income and all of their expenses. We've taken into consideration any possible tax credit that's available to them. That is my happy place. Patty's happy place, she's the one who does our bookkeeping. Her happy place is to make sure that everything is pulled in and balanced and reconciled. And she came to me one day and she said, Susan, there's this thing. And I said, well, it's a dime. And she said, right. She was very concerned about this dime. And I said, I can't help you with this one. You're gonna have to reconcile this on your own, because I have no idea why we're so worried about a dime. So if you have the ability and the patience to reconcile your books, keep doing what you're doing. If you are anything like I am when it comes to bookkeeping, realize that reconciliation is actually very important. It's a big step in making sure that everything is synced in correctly and balanced the way that it's supposed to be, so that it is valid if any authority figure comes in to look at your books. So that's something that you want to make sure that you're aware of. And then the next thing is, do you have the knowledge to create a profit and loss form? Now, a lot of times, like I said, with Excel, it's going to be something where here's the income, here's the outflow, ta-da, profit and loss. In a bookkeeping software, the profit and loss forms generally populate. There's a way to go in and create a report. And if you know how to create that report and you can look at that and say, that's exactly what I thought it was going to look like. Or, I actually had more expenses than I thought I would. Or, okay, so I've got this much income. I would imagine I should, in my head, have more of that profit still in my bank account. If it's not there, where did I spend it? Where did it flow out to? So I can make sure that on a regular basis, I'm keeping tabs on the income and the outflow of my business, and so that I'm spending my money that I'm earning from my business the way that I want to, and not the way that for some reason it's seeping out of my business. So let's say all of these things so far are true. Yes, 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 yes. You've got all the knowledge, you've got the patience, you've got the skill, you've got the reconciliation. The final question that I would ask you to check in with yourself about as a business owner, it's a long question, but it's very important. Does preparing your own books take into consideration the income that you're losing by spending your time and energy creating your profit and loss form versus spending that same time doing what you love in your business? And this is where I had to take a very hard look at myself beyond reconciliation of just not really liking that. I know how, I don't like it. It didn't make sense for me to spend the time creating my own profit and loss forms, creating my own spreadsheets, creating my own balance sheets, making sure that all of my transactions were taken into consideration. I knew what I was making in an hour, and I knew what it was going to cost me to hire a bookkeeper or an accountant to be able to do those things for me. And the amount of money that I was making versus what I was going to pay that person, first of all, it was taking me probably twice as long to do my own books as it would take a bookkeeper who knows what the heck they're doing. Because as much as I know taxes, I know how to basically do books. I understand the concept. I could do it if I wanted to, but for me, it's an arduous task, and it is something that I don't like doing. I would much rather be doing tax returns. So in my business, I decided I like this organic growth. I want to keep building my business in the tax vein of things. So I'm going to get a bookkeeper on site. And that way I know that that person can handle all of the bookkeeping that not only I need, but that my clients need. And then when I see those profit and loss forms, I know that they are 100% accurate. So look at that from your own perspective. And maybe at this point in your business, you say, you know what, I'm still growing, or I just started and I don't have the need for a bookkeeper. Great. Keep doing it yourself. Keep keeping track of your income and your expenses in whatever version of things that you are comfortable with. I have clients that start businesses often, and they'll come to me and they'll say, how do I keep my books? And the very first thing I say to them is, however you will make sure you do it. Because if you start something that is incredibly daunting, if you start yourself in QuickBooks and you get in there and you get frustrated and overwhelmed with it and you just put it aside and you say, you know what, I'm not going to deal with that this week, I'll deal with it next week. And the next week you start into it, now there's twice as much data, and you say, I'm not going to deal with that this week, I'll deal with it next week. And it becomes another week, and suddenly it's October and you haven't started tracking your income and expenses. That's where you know you've got to start finding somebody to be able to come in and do this for you. If that's not the case for you, if you are comfortable and confident in doing it regularly, keep doing what you're doing. I'm not here to sell you on a service that you don't need. So having said that, if you're doing something that you're comfortable with, you're confident in, great, keep doing it. Because most small businesses don't have the revenue to have an accounting or bookkeeping or tax department in-house, even though those are essential tasks. That's why we created the portion of our business where we say, hey, depending on how many transactions you have, how much work you need us to do for you, we can do it for this amount of money. And we have tried to make it very affordable to make sure that if you need that service, we're able to provide it without money being the impasse for that. So having said that, we do individualized quotes for every single client that we have. And if you have a need for that bookkeeping piece of things, give us a call or an email or a text or whatever your happy place is by way of communication, and we'll be able to give you a quote on that. And so this is, again, my business information. That is my office phone number there. If you go to our website, which is just boschtaxservices.com, my mobile number is on there as well, if you would prefer to text. And I will turn it back over to you, Kelly, for any questions that have been sent in as I've been talking and figure out what else we need to know.
Perfect, great, yes. So as Susan mentioned, we'll go ahead and get into the Q&A portion of today's webinar. But the first question we have is, do I need a bookkeeper if I have an accountant, and what is the difference between the two?
Okay, so a bookkeeper's functionality is to keep basic track of your journal entries and your general accounting ledgers. So the bookkeeper's function and the accountant's function actually overlap quite a bit. So the biggest difference is if you have a bookkeeper that is there to keep track of your journal entries, most of the time the accountant is the one who changes and looks at that and says, here is the financial statement for you. Here is your cash flow. Here's your balance sheet. Here's your P&L. The bookkeeper, just by rote nature, doesn't have the experience or the knowledge to interpret that for you. They're going to hand you the documents, and that is the end of their day. An accountant actually can look at those financial forms and say, okay, here's what we have. You've got a profit margin of 10%. And maybe you're not happy with that. Maybe we need to look at how we can maximize more of your work to get a bigger profit margin. And that's where the accountant would come into play. So you can have an accountant that has an accounting degree but is not a CPA, but you will never have a CPA that doesn't have an accounting degree. So not all accountants are CPAs and not all CPAs are, but all CPAs are accountants. So that's something to be aware of in those roles.
Thank you. The next question is in regards to a bookkeeper. They're asking, should my bookkeeper be local?
That actually doesn't matter unless it matters for you personally. If you're the kind of person that really likes to go in and sit down in somebody's office and have a face-to-face conversation, if that's your preference, that you want to sit down with somebody in their office or they sit down with you in theirs, it doesn't matter if that person is local or if you're dealing with them virtually because they're either not in the area or perhaps they work from home and they don't do business calls. So it's your own comfort level, but in terms of functionality, whether it's local or virtual, it does not matter where that bookkeeper is located, as long as they understand your type of business, what kinds of expenses and how to categorize them, and that they are in good enough communication with you, whether you need a weekly sales report, you need a monthly statement to show the income and expenses, or if you're someone who just needs a quarterly statement so you can make your estimated tax payments, that would be something you just want to make sure you're in contact enough with that person, whether they're local or virtual, so that you know you've got your business squared away.
Thank you. And we do have a couple more questions. Again, we want this to be your time. So if you have a question you'd like me to ask Susan today, please put that in your question feature and I'll get that asked. Otherwise, like I said, we have a couple more and then we'll wrap up for today. But the next question is, it's pretty general, but why is bookkeeping important for a small business?
Wow, there are a lot of reasons that bookkeeping is important. Because I am a tax advisor, because that's my crux. That is a huge part of why bookkeeping is important, because you want to make sure that what you're filing with the Internal Revenue Service, with your state and local taxing authorities, is accurate. And the only way to make sure that that is accurate is to have valid bookkeeping. If you aren't sure how much money you've earned, or you aren't sure how much your expenses are, usually income is pretty straightforward. It's whatever was deposited into your business bank account. It's the expenses that tend to get missed if we don't have good bookkeeping. And so you're really selling yourself short in terms of getting all of the deductions you can as a business owner if you don't have accurate bookkeeping. That would be, for me, the biggest thing, is just to make sure that you're getting all of your deductions for tax purposes, and so that you are also keenly aware as you're growing your business how much money you're putting out to earn the money that you're earning. Because at some point it can become cost prohibitive to own and run your own business. If you have more outflow consistently than you have income, it can be a hard pill to swallow, but you've got to make some tough decisions as the business owner as to how you're going to change that trajectory of your business. And the sooner you're aware of it, the sooner you can make tweaks and the sooner you can rectify that situation before you find yourself way behind the 8 ball, neck deep into a business with sunk costs and not being able to remedy that financial situation that you've created.
The next question we have is, what is the most important thing, or one of the most important things to know when planning to manually manage my books?
If you're going to manually manage your books, meaning that you're going to sit down and you're going to key in all of those journal entries, I would say, for me, it's always making sure that I'm caffeinated enough, that I'm aware of what's going on, that I don't make any errors in terms of my entries. And it's also important to stay up to date on that you set aside specific time, that you sit down with your books, you sit down with whatever software or program that you've decided you're going to use, and to keep it up to date. Never let it go beyond 30 days. Make sure it's done at least every single month, so that you are up to date on that bookkeeping and it doesn't become so daunting that you look at it on a day-to-day basis and you just keep procrastinating it. You just keep pushing it down the calendar. Make sure that you are on top of it, and make sure that you are triple checking. If you're doing it by hand, if we're using an Excel spreadsheet, for instance, or if you're manually entering the data into your software that you're using for your accounting, you want to make sure that you're making certain that you do not have any typos in that. and then look at the reports that are being generated from that and make sure that they make sense. So basically be incredibly detail oriented and make sure that you stay on top of it. Those would be my 2 key things for that.
Thank you. 1 second. For the next question, in regard to software programs, can you explain why you picked Sage over other programs?
Because Patty said so. That's the real short answer, because my bookkeeper said Sage is the way to go. Sage is the software that we want to use. From my understanding of why we picked Sage, it is we are able to do it online. We're able to get from our clients an accountant's login. And so one of the big reasons that I had a hiccup in my own head of giving this task to someone else was because I didn't want to give somebody else access to my account. I was terrified because I've always been the one who handled it. I didn't want somebody else in my bank account. But with an accountant login, what we do is we have access to get those transactions, but not move your money. We don't pay your bills. We don't move money from one account to another. We don't do anything along those lines. We don't have the authority with an accountant's login to move your money from point A to point B. And so that there's sort of a layer of protection for you and for us that we can't change where your money is located in your account. Now, if we're in there and we look at it and Patty says, hey, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but there's this draft set up that, like in my business in particular, we have auto drafts set up for our insurances. We've got auto drafts set up for all kinds of things. If she looks at my business account and she says, hey, Susan, you don't have enough in your account for that to draft, I can go in and I can move the money. But Sage allows us to be able to look at it, pull the transactions in and reconcile all of that, get the program that we need to be able to give you those reports, but we can't touch your money in essence.
And this question goes along with software. It came from the chat. Do you have opinions on if Toast is a good software?
I'm sorry, what's the software?
It's called Toast.
Toast. I do not know that one. And I will say there are a lot of softwares out there. And if you find one that works for you, again, stay with it. If it's something that you find that is user-friendly, that's cost-effective, that you are comfortable and confident working in, I would say stick with it. There are a lot. I mean, I would hesitate to even guess how many thousands of software options there are, but I would say take into consideration the cost, the customer friendliness or the user friendliness of those things, and the reconciliation function and the reports function. Those are going to be the key things to look at with those.
Our next question is, are you able to help a business whose books are really messed up or may need some work?
Yes, we are. That is something that we've been able to come in and help with. And generally what we do is we start from whatever point that business owner says, I stopped doing my books, or I think there's a problem right about here. Perhaps it's a partnership and one partner very abruptly left the business and you think maybe there was some hinky stuff going on in the books, but you really can't find it. We can definitely help with that. We can definitely go in and look at how far back we need to go, whether it's a year or 2 or 5. We can certainly take a look at that and we can help to get that rectified and reconciled. And if at that point the business owner says, okay, if that's the case, if that's what my profit and loss looked like in 2016, my taxes were wrong, we can also help correct those. So we can help on all of those levels and all of those layers of the financial side of a business.
And then the last question we have is, would it be helpful for bookkeepers to have access to my online banking platform?
Absolutely. Yeah, you absolutely want your bookkeeper, your accountant to have access to that online platform. And like I said, there's an accountant's login that most banks offer. And so it's a different set of credentials that I use to log into my bank than what Patty uses to log into my bank. When she logs in, she can see everything that happens, but she can't move my money. And when I log in, I can do anything I want to. I can take it out, I can move it from one account to another, but it is the simplest and most accurate way to get those transactions downloaded so that we know that we've got everything that we need to capture that accurate statement.
Great. So like I said, that was the last question that we had. If you have another question that pops up after today's webinar, Susan's information is up on the screen. And then lastly, here's a list of our upcoming webinars. Today's webinar was the fourth part of our How to Start a Small Business series. So the other three are on demand. You can find them on our events page or on our YouTube page. You can go back and watch all three other parts of this series, and today's will be up in the coming weeks, so you can refer back to this one as well. And we also have our other two series. If either of the next events look interesting to you, you can visit our events page to learn more about those and register. But with that, thank you all so much for joining us today. Thank you, Susan, Derek, and everyone for your time. We hope to see you again soon.